The widest tornado ever measured was so enormous, people standing on one side couldn't see the other. On May 31st, 2013, just outside El Reno, Oklahoma, meteorologists clocked something that broke the scale entirely. A typical tornado spans a few hundred yards. This one stretched 2.6 miles across, wider than most towns are long. Storm chasers driving toward it didn't realize they were already inside the outer wall. Buried within the main funnel were smaller, secondary vortices spinning at nearly 300 miles per hour, invisible until they were on top of you. And the whole structure kept shifting shape and direction without warning, which is exactly what made it fatal. It killed several veteran storm chasers who had tracked tornadoes for decades. There's wide, there's massive, and then there's a tornado you can drive into by accident. The costliest tornado in American history didn't need to be the biggest. It just needed to hit the right place. On May 22nd, 2011, an EF5 tore through Joplin, Missouri, just under a mile wide, but moving straight through the heart of a city of 50,000 people. In roughly 38 minutes, it leveled around 7,000 homes and gutted an entire hospital, forcing patients to be evacuated mid-storm. Close to 18,000 cars were crushed or thrown, and whole commercial strips, grocery stores, schools, warehouses, were reduced to splinters and foundation slabs. The final repair bill landed near $3 billion, the most expensive single tornado ever recorded. It's proof that a storm doesn't have to be historic in size to be historic in cost. Sometimes it just needs your zip code. Most people assume the deadliest tornado on record touched down somewhere in Tornado Alley. It didn't. On April 26, 1989, a tornado struck the Daulatpur and Saturia regions of Bangladesh, one of the most densely packed rural areas on Earth. Homes there were built from bamboo and tin, with no basements and no siren system to give anyone a head start. The tornado cut a path roughly 10 miles long and over half a mile wide, and it moved through crowded villages with nowhere for people to shelter. In minutes, an estimated 1,300 people were killed, still the highest tornado death toll ever documented anywhere in the world. Another 12,000 were hurt, and tens of thousands were left without homes by nightfall. Tornadoes don't check a map before they decide where to be historic. For a long time, people assumed elevation was a kind of shield, that thin, cold mountain air simply couldn't support a tornado. That assumption didn't survive contact with the Rockies. The highest altitude tornado ever confirmed in the U.S. touched down among peaks near 12,000 feet, conditions meteorologists considered almost hostile to funnel formation. It still formed, still touched the snowpack, and still tore through alpine trees that had stood for generations. If a tornado can climb that high and still function, there's no terrain on the planet that counts as automatically safe. You can buy the house at the top of the mountain, but the weather doesn't care how much you paid for the view. Most tornadoes are on the ground for minutes. One stayed down for over 3.5 hours. On March 18, 1925, the tri-state tornado touched down and simply refused to stop, crossing Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana in a single unbroken track. By the time it finally lifted, it had traveled 219 miles, still the longest continuous tornado path ever recorded, while moving at a brutal 60-plus miles per hour, too fast for most people to outrun on foot. Witnesses said it barely looked like a classic funnel at all. It was wrapped in dust and rain, which meant towns often had almost no visual warning before it arrived. Before it finally dissipated, it had killed nearly 700 people, the deadliest single tornado in U.S. history. Most storms interrupt an afternoon. This one crossed state lines like it had somewhere to be. Quick pause before we keep going. If you're finding this genuinely unsettling, which, fair, do me a favor and hit like and subscribe. Costs nothing, takes 2 seconds, and it actually helps this channel keep making these. Also, stick around, because right at the end I'm going to ask a question that only makes sense if you watched the whole thing. Okay, back to the chaos. Now imagine not one tornado, but 360 of them inside a single 72-hour stretch. That's the record for the largest tornado outbreak ever documented, and it happened in late April 2011 across the southeastern United States. On April 27th alone, 216 individual tornadoes touched down in a single day, several rated EF4 and EF5, the most violent categories that exist. Entire towns were hit back-to-back, with almost no recovery time between strikes. Warning sirens ran for hours on end, but there were simply too many funnels on the ground at once for every community to get a clean escape window. By the time the outbreak finally ended, it had killed more than 300 people across multiple states. Nature didn't send one disaster that weekend, It sent an entire waiting list. Then there's the tornado that didn't just destroy Jarrell, Texas. It erased it. On May 27, 1997, an F5 tore through the town, but unlike most tornadoes, this one moved painfully slowly. That slowness is exactly what made it so devastating. Instead of passing through, it lingered over each block, grinding the same ground over and over. Houses weren't simply flattened, they were stripped down to bare concrete slabs, with nothing left standing to even suggest a structure had been there. The tornado peeled up grass, topsoil, and pavement, leaving raw earth behind, and trees that survived were left completely bark-free. It's widely considered the most structurally destructive tornado ever documented, a storm that didn't just wreck a neighborhood, it deleted the evidence a neighborhood ever existed. And finally, the record that still hasn't been touched, the fastest wind speed ever measured on Earth. On May 3, 1999, near Moore, Oklahoma, a specialized mobile radar unit pointed directly into an approaching tornado and clocked a wind speed of 301 miles per hour. That's faster than a Formula One car at full throttle, and faster than most commercial jets during takeoff. At that speed, wind doesn't just knock things over, it turns ordinary objects into airborne shrapnel. Brick homes were pulverized into debris fields, and vehicles were tossed like they weighed nothing. More than 2 decades later, no wind speed on the planet's surface has come close to breaking that number. It's the reminder sitting at the top of every list like this one. Nature has the single heaviest foot on Earth, and it has never once gotten a ticket for it. So here's that question I promised. Out of every record we just went through, which one was the case where the tornado's slow speed, not its size, not its wind, was actually what made the destruction so complete? Drop your answer in the comments, and if you made it this far, you already know what to do. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.